Le Grand Bouffe.
The Big Feast.
Here we are, Cole Smithey, here with Mike Lacy, to copiously consume international culture and politics through the prism of a single film. And today's movie is ANDRZEJ ZULAWSKI's 1981 film, Possession.
Why'd you make me watch this movie, man? No, I'm just kidding. But this is a very strange movie. It gave me a very weird start to my morning when I watched it this morning. Wow, man. It's out there.
This is not a date movie, by any means.
I'd say if you're on a date and you see this movie and it goes well, that's a huge red flag. Before we get into it, what are we drinking today?
Excellent question, Mike. We are drinking Flower Power, an IPA. They don't list the ABV, but I think it's around 7.1, 7.2.
I'd say 7.2 and a half. I just feel...
From the Ithaca Beer Company. I've had this beer many times. It's one of my faves. I like to be exploratory, but this beer I always keep coming back to because it's it might take you a little time to cozy up to that name, Flower Power. It's probably not everyone's cup of tea, but it is a really delicious IPA.
It's got some floral notes to it, obviously.
Indeed it does. Let's have a little taste of that beer.
Yeah.
It's very drinkable, very refreshing. It's got a good mouthfeel, as they say.
That's a really gross phrase there, mouthfeel. That goes right up there with moist and like other things that...
Yeah, and hamster.
Ooh, no one's brought up hamster to me. You know it has the word ham in it? That just occurred to me. Ugh.
There's weird words floating around all the time.
A little piece of pork with feet as a pet. I hate hamsters. Every time I heard a story about someone microwaving a hamster, I was like, well, that makes sense. Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Pantalone is another strange word that I always it befuddles me.
As in like pantaloons and pantalones?
Right, very similar. Or just, you can say pants with a straight face, but I defy you to say pantalone or pantalone with a straight face.
Yeah. What I've always wondered about pants is like, you have a pair of pants, so that means like each leg is a pant? What the hell does that mean?
2 for 1.
2 for 1. Well, speaking of 2 for 1,
yeah.
I'll take that segue.
Okay.
This was both, I don't know, a horror movie and a romantic comedy? No, it's something else in addition to having deep horror elements to it.
Right. Well, this is a movie that I have yet to read a review of this film where I think any critic gets it right. And I'm still scratching my head. I haven't written a review of this film yet because it's going to take a lot of work. This is not an easy movie to dissect. It's has a very Eastern European sensibility, and it's set in East Berlin, which is Polish director ZULAWSKI. That's one of the primary conceits of the film, and the film opens we're driving through very empty streets, very unpopulated, dirty streets of East Berlin, and you see a crucifix with a tire, but it's not really a crucifix. Maybe it's a telephone pole that looks like a crucifix, but it's got an old tire hanging off of it, and then he just throws you right into the deep end of the coldest dramatic water that you've ever felt.
That's Sam Neill and
Isabelle Adjani. Just
him showing up, them instantly fighting. You don't know their relationship. It's romantic, and then it turns out they're married and they have a child. It's so intense, and he gives you no help with the exposition. I'm not sure what Sam Neill's job is. Like really soon, he's reporting to his like 5 officials at a panel, and they're debriefing him on something.
Right. I think he's some sort of spy.
Yeah, that was the sense I got.
So it seems like he can come and go through East Berlin, but he's not been pleased with his job, and he's got a briefcase full of money. He, from his last job, he asked them not to. He wants to quit. He wants somebody else to take over, but they want to rehire him immediately. And so, but his real concern seems to be his wife Anna, who's played by the lovely Isabelle Adjani, who is the craziest, most bipolar sadist. We should say that it's a very flawed film. There's no one to root for in this movie.
Yeah. Not saying a film necessarily has to have a character you like. There are films where there's no characters that you like, but I was at times bored because of that, because there was crazy shit going on, and that was interesting, but it's hard to have stakes when there's no one to root for. Also, when it's very vague of what the conflict is. Well, there's a lot of conflict going on, clearly, but it's called possession, and at one point he tells his wife, to jump into it a little bit more, I think we should keep going on the plot a bit, but he tells his wife, "You're like a woman possessed." And I was like, okay, so is this just a very intense version of a possession story, and then I should be looking at it as this woman has been overcome by something, and maybe that's what's going on, maybe not. I have no idea at the end of the day what is going on with her or anyone else.
Well, he's working with so many layers of allegory and political commentary and socio-political commentary. My understanding is that he made the film after a divorce.
I got that sense.
And so his hatred of womankind, or at least his distrust of womankind, is very on display. And I think Sam Neill's character at one point in the film even says that women are just, they can't be trusted, and there's nothing good about them.
This is an unquestionably misogynist film, I think. I think that's the only reading I would disagree with.
No, I agree that it's misogynistic, but I think I don't know what the female word for misogynistic is, because she's his equal. She's every bit. Well, let's get it straight. They're both killers.
It's misandry. I'm in a Facebook group called Casual Misandry, actually. So
what's it called?
Misandry.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I live and learn. They're misandry. I love that. Great. Yeah. So she's a sadist.
Yeah, she might be literally a sadist. So what we've been leading up towards is, it's a simple plot basically of her having an affair with another man. There's something else going on.
And this is where I see the political commentary. We've got some very interesting cultural distinctions, clash of cultural distinctions going on, because Sam Neill is very obviously an Australian. He has the Australian accent. Isabelle Adjani is French, in which she's giving her a ballet lesson at one point. She's speaking in French, and Heinrich, Anna's lover, is this metrosexual German who represents this new agey kind of German who's in touch with his Zen. Yeah, he's like a German version of Sting.
I got the sense that he was a very specific type, that if I was around in East Berlin in 1981, I'd be like, oh, one of these guys. But today I was like, what the hell is this guy?
His shirt's always unbuttoned down to his navel.
He's very aggressive. He's kind of like always about to do like capybara or whatever it is.
Capoeira. And he is a kung fu master, as we learned during a fight.
It was kind of like a tango kung fu. It's like, it was before film really, it was before like the kung fu craze, before we kind of knew what martial arts looked like. And so he just kind of is in like a dancer's pose after he like knocks Sam Neill down. The whole time feeling him up. It's extremely homoerotic.
Well, he does defeat him by kicking him in the nuts, which...
Well, that's a classic Jean-Claude Van Damme. Well, that's a punch to the nuts, is the JCVD mood, but it's,
And as a Bruce Lee aside, the Green Hornet, when Bruce Lee played Kato, that was the first time that anyone had ever seen somebody get kicked in the balls on television.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I learned something new today.
So they have this very strange relationship.
The husband and wife.
And wife. They've got an 8-year-old boy named Bob.
Ugh.
And so, I've seen them film twice. In my second watching of it, and by the way, just a shout out to TCM. They showed it just this past week, and that's how I was able to watch it. And I think it's pretty cool that TCM is doing this streaming service now with Criterion that will launch in the fall. And they've started this new series where they're showing underground films and cult films, and that's where this film clearly falls in. It's a strange movie, and I watched it with my wife, and I had to give her a heads up before we watched it that this, if she really wanted to watch it with me, it was not going to be comfortable. It's the strangest. I think it's probably, and I've seen a lot of movies, I think it's probably the strangest film I've ever seen.
Because everything we described sounds like it could be like an Oscar-worthy dramatic piece, behind the wall, this love triangle with the kid in the mix. But things to say, if you haven't seen it, it's out of a 1 to 10 of emotional intensity in every scene. It's about a 37.5. And it starts there, and then it goes even higher and even broader. And there's this really just intense, just like erotic openness and intensity to Sam Neill and his wife that is off-putting to me in a way I can't put my finger on, but somehow it's like that energy of just these people, like they're kind of acting like aliens. Like, I don't know if this is what the film scene was like and what those people were like, but to compare it to the movie we watched last week, where we're seeing people who are in positions of power and what their sex lives and romances, that's it's a bit over the top, but they're still humans. There's something eerily inhuman about these people. So then when we get to these like H.P. Lovecraft type sex scenes,
well, then they each have a double that appears near the end of the film. Her double appears much earlier than his double does, but I did, you started out talking about how it seemed Oscar worthy. I did want to point out that Isabella Gianni won Best Actress at Cannes in '81 for this.
For this,
yeah. But you're right. It starts out at a very high intensity level. It's very disturbing, very upsetting, and the soundscape for the film is so jarring and brutal. And I anytime there's an electric knife in a movie, I've seen 2 films that have used electric knives in very brutal ways. And anytime there's an electric knife, I cringe.
So let's unpack that scene. So she's cutting meat with an electric knife and then putting it into a meat grinder, and it's just like falling into the sink. Like, it's a really there's intense.
No, it's piling up on the cutting board.
Okay. Well,
but then there's also the food processor.
Yeah,
she's shoving it down.
Yeah, she's shoving it into the food processor. So, it's just, there's a thing happening in the scene. There's no explanation for why she's doing this. And then she takes it and she, like, cuts her throat. He bandages her up. And it's just kind of, like, in this reality, in this intensity, no one asks a question, like, why are you doing that? So if this is on the level of political commentary or something that's, like, going over my head, where this makes sense on an allegorical level, maybe that's what's going on. Or it's just this hyper intense surrealistic world where, like, that makes sense. And then later he is cutting his own arm and she's like, I have to go to the store, making no comment.
Well, and it brings us back to what is the movie. It's a psychological horror, emotional, familial, political thriller. This movie does not fit into a genre or a subgenre very easily. You could go with psychological thriller. I'd be willing to if I had to just pin it down to one thing, I would say it's a psychological thriller. But there's so much political commentary and there's so much deeply personal, emotional commentary that when you talk about the phantasmagoric aspects of it, the H.P. Lovecraft aspects of it, and one of the things I warned my wife when I was trying to set it up for her, I said, well, if you think Clockwork Orange is a twisted, disturbing film, this is much worse, and there's a creature.
Let's talk about this creature. So it's after she has moved out. After she's left her husband once and is with the kung fu
and
German
bad
dude.
parenting, really bad parenting.
Oh yeah,
on both sides. But she's abandoned Bob. She's gone and gotten herself a big spacious apartment that really does look like it is reminiscent of the apartment in Last Tango in Paris. It's this big high ceilinged apartment with not a scrap of furniture except for a bed with rubber sheets. Green rubber
I
sheets.
didn't notice there were rubber sheets. I've never seen rubber sheets. I don't pick up on that right away. Wow. So at some point in this apartment, we see this like Cronenbergian creature. That it seems like she's. You start to get the sense that, and tell me if this is right. She's constructing him out of people that she's brought over to her house and cut apart, and is refabbing a new person. To skip to the end a little bit.
Well, they're both murderers. That's the thing that's really established in this film, is that Sam Neill's character and Isabelle Adjani's characters are both killers. And
how do we know that about Sam Neill?
Excuse me?
How do we know that about Sam Neill? That he's a murderer? Who does he murder?
Well, I don't want to give too much away about the movie, but they jointly murder someone, if you will.
Oh, right. Yes, you're right. Yeah, we'll hold that one back.
Yeah, we'll hold that one back. But there's also some interesting. There's just so many interesting elements that are underplayed. There's Sam Neill's character goes to a private detective to follow his wife around to find out where she's going, and you really wonder why he even cares, because in the opening scene when they're in bed together and they're trying to get on the same page, and she asks him how he feels, and he says, "Oh, do you really care?" And she says something she says no, and he says, "Oh, I didn't really care about you anymore either." So they're really, you wonder why there's this relationship.
Am I just thick for realizing this? So if Sam Neill is not supposed to be Australian, but in fact British, then we have like a British, a French, and a German like love triangle. And isn't that what Berlin was split between? Wasn't it a British, a German, and a French sector? So.
I'd go with that. And Bob is the American.
Bob, right?
The kid who likes to stay in the bathtub and
who's getting
hold his breath in the bathtub.
Who's getting nice boat presents from the German.
That's right. Heinrich has given little Bob a very fancy sailboat that any 8-year-old kid would be envious of.
So putting that layer onto it, I start to forgive the more kind of like non-human elements to their characters. Their characters are quite they're quite extreme. They're not very relatable, like in the slightest. It's just this heightened sort of spy thriller, hyper erotic version of human beings. And if you're trying to look at it as just that and relating to it, I am afraid of you if you can relate to it.
Well, I think it's the thing that this movie has going for it is the escalation, because he manages to come in really hot and go farther and farther and farther and farther. And when you think things, it's a very uncomfortable film to watch, and it gets to unbearable levels, and then it goes so much further.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what he was getting at with this phantasmagoric creature that impregnates her. I think she's impregnated. She has a miscarriage, like a stillborn miscarriage in the subway. And this particular scene, if there was ever any doubt about Isabelle Adjani's power as an actress, this scene, I've never seen any woman give a performance that she does here. I mean, it's a very choreographed performance. I don't know if she choreographed how she did what she did, but it's a pretty extended sequence of her having these convulsions and spazzing out really in an empty subway tunnel. And
there's just so many like different colored liquids and
coming out of her ears and orifices.
Oh, it's really wild.
It's so disturbing. This movie will keep you up. If you don't have nightmares from it, you still, I think, you'd probably find it hard to fall asleep after. I had a hard time falling asleep after I saw it.
Well, I watched it this morning, so I'm looking forward to not sleeping for the next couple days. I have questions about how he makes that creature. Though I've been saying it's really like this Lovecraftian supernatural thing. On the other hand, it didn't surprise me when there was something supernatural in this. Something about the filmmaking, the cinematography, these wide angles that were very Kubrickian.
So many Dutch angles in this movie.
And the camera's constantly moving in a very wide pattern, this very, almost feeling like the POV of a monster type thing. That something about the craft and the escalation and the people that didn't act like regular humans at all. When we get this weird Cronenberg flesh monster, I was like, yeah, all right, now it's making sense.
Well, to me, the monster represents jealousy. You have to come. You have to. Human beings just want to categorize things so that we can try and understand them, and that's the only thing that I can get to. Bruno Newton, by the way, is the French cinematographer who shot this film, and he really does get a lot of credit for filming. He also is known for other great French films, Jean de Florette, but he and also Brubaker, the Robert Redford film. But
I think he is what makes this a work of art rather than
it's such a beautiful film to look
a madman riffing. Because there are sequences where there are people just giving these long diatribes about religion and about politics and the self, which are like sort
okay,
of
good. So now I'm glad you said that, because that really narrows in on one of the direct points that ZULAWSKI goes for. Is he's trying to make this distinction between faith and chance.
Faith and chance.
And
that's what the abortion was, right? That was the death of faith, is what she says. What's
not an abortion, though, stillborn.
It's right.
Or miscarriage. Yeah. So the Sam Neill character is pretty obviously an atheist, but her character at one point, right before the miscarriage occurs, she goes into a church. Reminds me of a scene from Bad Lieutenant when Harvey Keitel goes into the church. Similar camera angle. She's looking up at the statue of Christ, and she's moaning and letting out these strange sounds. It's just
kind of
so
erotic and kind
painful.
of not. It
Yeah,
sounded like a kind of like a cat in heat or something.
Her performance, though, I found myself watching it the second time. I felt like there were a few line readings that didn't quite ring the bell for me from Sam Neill, but everything that Isabelle Adjani does in this movie is completely on point. She doesn't miss a beat anywhere. Her emotional beats in this film are so precise and so, I mean, she's jumping octaves all over the place.
But you just can't imagine, what's her direction, I mean, what is the director putting into it? Because I have such a hard time telling what the plot is at a given place, but it's a fascinating piece of work because he clearly has a thing that he's going for and has a wide spectrum of what people shouting and being crazy. It's not just like, well, now they're shouting and they're being over the top. It's like there are a million different shades of dramatic, crazy-eyed, clothes-ripping intensity in this film, and it just it's honestly amazing to see that someone can be so precise with this. Where normally, and that the actors can pull it off. Where normally say, "Well, ratchet it up," and then it's kind of the same no matter what.
Oh, the timing is phenomenal when they meet in the Einstein Cafe to discuss what they're going to do with Bob and how their relationship's going to go, and Sam Neill's character says he doesn't want to see Bob anymore, and she's really toying with him at that point, and he loses it, and he just trashes that cafe. And this is to me where the one little bit of slapstick humor where when the chefs come out,
Yeah, even
and
the chefs
jump in to settle him down.
Yeah, that's where it really starts to go off the rails. Is Sam Neill, who's the seemingly normal character, is just demolishing this cafe, and you're wondering, like, where is this going? You know, if you're starting here, where are you going to wind up? And it goes even further than you can imagine.
Well, here's a character that, from what we can suss out, doesn't have any compunction about what he does for money. Whatever he's been doing to get this briefcase of cash from these shady characters, one of whom wears an eye patch like a pirate. And there's also...
one has pink socks.
Right, the pink socks allusion to communism, where the last question that they ask him is if the person that he had the meeting with was still wearing pink socks. And that character shows up at the end of the film, and I think the director probably overstates it when he has to take off his shoe. You can already pretty clearly see the pink socks. So ZULAWSKI is obviously making commentary on fascism, on communism, on capitalism, on male-female connection, on family, on religion. He's going for it. He's just throwing everything and the kitchen sink into this very emotional film. That the timing, the tempo of the film is what holds it together, because in all of these scenes, there's such tempo. Everything is just moving. So you can't help but be mesmerized by the movie, even if you're completely lost most of the time, which I think, especially for Western viewers, I think most people would be.
Yeah, it seems like you'd have to keep a bunch of note cards to keep track of what's going on at different pieces, and almost make like an evidence dungeon of what's happening to have a coherent understanding of it. But I do agree that it's like an experience that, though, you know, at some points, like I was saying, I felt a little dull because I didn't have a window into it. That's the one level that there's not there, are relatable humans that then take it into like an allegorical heightened realm. It's exclusively in that, and it's an exercise in only being in there and consistently. And I'd say it achieves that. It feels like it's hitting its mark, though I gotta say I'm still confused of what it's precisely going for.
Well, the poster for the film tells a lot. It's a beautiful poster. I don't know who did the artwork for it, but it's a very striking poster where it's a woman. It's clearly Isabella Gianni, but she has her head tilted way back, and she's got these giant... She's a Medusa. She's got these giant snakes. You don't see any of the heads. It's all just the tails. And she's bare-breasted, and one of the tail of the snake is snaking down, so the tip of the tail ends right on her nipple, and she's constrained, she's confined around her midriff by the snake. So possession, you know, what possesses people, what possesses governments, what possesses ambition. There's one line in the film when Sam Neill's character is saying that he doesn't really feel any ambition anymore. And I think that, again, that points us back to the jealousy, because that seems to be the overriding motivation for his character is just that he is so insanely jealous that he has to hire a private detective. And the filmmaker does throw in, I thought, a pretty smooth little bit of a little nod to homosexuality when you discover that the seemingly straight private detective is living with a male lover. They end up having not such a good time.
Yeah, it seemed like that was a little tidbit there of someone actually having it seemed like real affection for someone, and these are totally minor characters, but the way he says, like, I don't know if this would like matter to you, but I live with him, the other detective, and it throws in, talking about it now, it throws into relief to me all of the other forms of attraction in it and of connection are, you're right, just about possession, about desire, about domination, and the two men in this and the woman just are feeding on each other, especially the men trying to dominate her, but then her reaction is to, well, I think she's creating some sort of a beast out of like the bits of people that she's chopped up or something. It's unclear what the origin of the creature is.
Well, she's certainly playing into the insanity. She's certainly manipulating the craziness around her. And getting back to the doubles, her double happens to be the school teacher who takes care of Bob, and that's when I think you see Sam Neill, who they do get in bed together at one point. Sam Neill's character and the teacher, who is also played by Isabella Gianni, although her hair is different.
She's got green contacts in.
She has bangs, but she's very sweet.
She's got bangs.
Very maternal and humorous, and I think that subplot is a vision of what these people were once like. And I think that's why he put it in the film. So I guess what I would say, just for somebody who's coming into this movie not knowing anything, it's made by a filmmaker who's just gone through, obviously, a very horrible divorce with somebody who at one time they had a great relationship and really loved each other, but that love turned completely 180 degrees in the other direction, and now everything is wrong and everything is bad, and nothing is going to make anything better.
So if you're up for that, check out Possession, playing on TCM now. We need to get a sponsorship deal from TCM.
Couldn't agree more. All right, well, thanks for listening, everyone. See what we have for you next time.